24-hour colds. They're wonderful. Hi, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. This is CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 249 and 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you're download the app. Make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google, Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now, joining me as usual, of course, is David Morassutti of Sportsnet, a writer on their webpage. And I guess you call it your webpage or web channel?
Webpage.
Yeah. I want to make sure us old folks don't know the terminology real well. Well, I got to say this is very interesting. You know, all year, well, not all year, for a lot of the year, like about once Calgary started going in the, it seemed like they weren't headed in the right direction. I was promoting the idea that Mark Killam could be their head coach. And all Dickinson had to do was get out of the way, move upstairs or something. Well, that never happened. Mark Gillum was released, and so were a lot of other, members of the Calgary coaching staff. And he turned up in Edmonton. Now, we talked about him turning up in Edmonton. He's a special teams coordinator, but he's done other things as well. He has a long history of coaching. He also is Canadian, something that, we have more of today than we've had, I guess, ever. Canadian head coaches. If you count Dickinson, who's a wannabe Canadian, he changed citizenship. And he comes to this Edmonton team, and immediately they have a press conference soon after he's brought in, David, and they announce a contract extension to 2027. Now, I looked really hard to see if anybody had any video up, including Edmonton, on the press conference. I couldn't find it. Did you?
I didn't see anything unless it was on the website, but no, I didn't see anything.
I looked on the CFL Elks page. Usually, they're pretty good on theirs, and it wasn't there. There was an announcement that there would be a press conference, and that press conference was today. It was called for this morning. It's middle afternoon, late afternoon, and there's nothing out from the press conference. How important is that it isn't out? I mean, is it just another time that we say, well, the CFL sometimes doesn't handle media very well, but we haven't really talked about any specific team. I speak about Edmonton, and I speak in that manner about Edmonton because this is a team that needs to get good news out there.
Yeah, I mean, look, they posted the press conference when Mark Killam was introduced. So my guess is like maybe because Trey Ford was already there, maybe they just didn't feel like it was worth doing it. But personally, I think where they went wrong here is that they people crave this stuff. It's not that hard to get a camera set up and put it and make it live. But I guess there's a lot of things behind it, right, that go into it. So maybe they just felt it wasn't something that they wanted to live stream or anything like that, or even I don't know, like when exactly the press conference happened. So maybe it's just
they said it was called for this morning.
Yeah, so morning their time, so early afternoon. Like there is a way to get
a little time. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's unfortunate, but I mean, again, those are sort of the things that kind of go against the CFL in a lot of ways, right? That lack of content, especially for us in Toronto that can't necessarily get to Edmonton for a press conference, right?
And I'm kind of, I guess I'm taking it personally. Why couldn't they? I'm just kidding. It's that time of year. Content's really important, and we like to do the show once a week, and we like to talk about things. I would have loved to have seen the body language. Mark is not a body language kind of guy from what, the experience I have with him, the various Grey Cups that Calgary were in, meeting him, and, so maybe that's not advantageous, but I do think it's important for their fan base and for their community that, Edmonton, the organization, keeps pumping home the idea this is a new group of people. Yes, a new coach, but the new coach, if, he follows, the trending that's been going on with new CFL coaches who have been very successful, who come out of coaching staffs, who haven't coached before as head coaches, and also the relationship that Trey Ford needs, in my opinion. He has not had this past year. The relationship was a little better with management and the people that actually run the team and trot out the lineups, right? I really hope that he gets a real chance this time. There are, the guy isn't perfect, right? There are
Mhm.
some, you know, not warts, but there are some blemishes in what he can and has done, right? But I don't see a better option anywhere else for Edmonton. So, they should be all in with him and and maybe, I know there's the one thing that we heard is that maybe he doesn't dedicate himself to practicing 100%. He's not a all-out practice guy.
But then why give him a 3-year contract? That's kind of my prevailing thought of all this, right? Like you're not giving a player like this a 3-year contract if you don't feel he's worth it, or he's not going to put the time into it, right? Like to me, that's the part that I'm trying to figure out in all this, right? Is 3-year deal would indicate to me that you are ready to say he is our quarterback, he is our guy. You don't give 3-year contracts to a player that maybe he can be our starting quarterback. I don't know many quarterbacks in the CFL or players in the CFL that get 3-year deals after their rookie deal to maybe be a starting quarterback. I think this is Edmonton saying, we know you can do it. We believe you can do it because we are making this commitment to show you we know you can do it.
Yeah,
And that's what this whole deal says to me.
yeah, and but for me, it says that, and I should say, not but, and um, I think the relationship between Trey Ford and his head coach now, because of the way they handled it, because of the way they did it, did he need a contract? Did he have to have a contract? Yeah, it just seems to me that now what this looks like and the way it plays out, he's not really Mark Killam's guy, right? Because Mark hasn't had a chance to coach him. So he's the guy that the vice president and general manager of the Edmonton Elks feels is a good part of the team fitting into, Killam's plans. I just think it would have been better if, Killam was the coach and then they showed him that kind of support. I don't know if you know what I'm saying or the hair I'm splitting. I don't know. It just seems to me that this looks now like, okay, Killam, you're the head coach, but this is your guy for 3 years. That's what it looks like to me.
Well, to me, I think one of the first things Ed Hervey did when he spoke with Mark Killam, he says, "Do you think Trade Ford's our guy?" Right? I think that had to have been a conversation before they even made that hire. Right? You again, I know contracts in the CFL sometimes get muddied a little bit, and what are
Yeah, they're not
guarantees?
guaranteed.
Well, there's now partial guarantees, right? And how they are kind of put out there. And I was trying to see, like, Ed Hervey said that he was wiping the slate clean, right?
Yeah.
It's a new. He was on one of their radio stations. I did see that. And it's basically saying it's a clean slate, starting fresh, new head coach, new general manager, all that stuff in the past, gone, right? And so I'm very curious to see now. Yeah, like again, we didn't get a chance to see. Um, we didn't get a chance to see what Mark Killam had to say about this. I'm sure. Again, he's not doing this if he didn't believe it. Now, I'm looking at the deal here based on what Three Down Nation has reported. So this year he's getting $100,000 signing bonus. That right there, that's an
That's
important
guaranteed.
figure in any. You can't take that back. So he will make up to $367,000 this year. That's a decent chunk of change for quarterback. It's
Oh,
not.
especially a quarterback that hasn't established himself as a
Yeah.
number one. He
In
scratched around the surface, maybe.
so 2026, he can earn 400,000 in playtime and hard money combined. So 425,000 maximum. And then in the final year of his deal, he can make over $440,000.
Wow. I mean, you and I have promoted the guy, right? So people should know that we're high on him
Yes.
as a quarterback in Edmonton. It appears
Like,
Edmonton management's high on him being
and,
the guy too.
and look, I think the thing here is that this team needed to solidify that before they did anything else. They want to come and attract free agents. Free agents are going to say, "Well, who's your quarterback? Who's the guy that's going to be throwing me a receiver? Who's throwing me the football? Running back? Offensive lineman? Anything? Right? They need to know who the quarterback." So, and look, with the way that the landscape is moving, they kind of needed to do this to tell the rest of the league, this is our guy. Our quarterback room's still not solidified yet. I don't think there's any other quarterback signed, right? With McLeod, I don't think he was. I think his was a 1-year deal. So I'm very curious to see. It sounds like this is his job.
Yeah, and
The-
it sounds like they don't have much money left over for a guy like McLeod.
and like, I don't think they'd want to pay him McLeod. Like, go get a backup. They need a backup. Now, does that make them? I don't know if it'll work out, but does that make them a player for Nick Arbuckle? Right, a guy who knows he's not going to start, but can be ready to go if needed.
Yes, you bring up Arbuckle. The question is, how much is he willing to take to continue playing, right? That's the question. We don't know. I don't know. I don't know if you know. Is Arbuckle, um, is he expecting a certain level of salary? And if that level of salary doesn't work well on a team because of the salary already being paid by the quarterback to the other quarterback, that might cause things to be a little iffy. My question is, in my opinion, is now this press conference. So one thing that it has, um, there is an attempt by upper management with Edmonton is to stabilize the quarterbacking position. If there's been nothing, if there's been nothing worse, I don't think there's been anything worse with Edmonton than their lack of quarterback stability over the last 4 or 5 years. And I think this is this is Hervey's attempt to send the message, to tack on what you said about bringing players in, to say, we are stable at quarterback. We have a plan. There is no, we'll see what Trey Ford does. Let's bring McLeod in. Maybe he can be the kind of quarterback he was in Toronto to get his team to the Grey Cup. All those ifs, right? Now what they're saying is, I mean, there's a big if. If Trey Ford can meet up, what I think is what Edmonton is selling. They're selling the idea we've got stability now at quarterback. We're not playing this game anymore, a trial and error. We've got our guy. He's it. What do you think? And people like you and I, and I'll speak for myself first. I think they'll be okay if Trey Ford is given a real chance. I've promoted the idea of having him. I've heard you do it, but I'll let you speak on it. Is he the right guy for Edmonton? I think you said something like he's the best guy for Edmonton, right? And so
Yeah.
I agree with you. So I
Well,
agree with
who else is there? McLeod, no. Cody Fajardo? I don't think so. I'm not taking Cody Fajardo over Trey
Harris. Just
Ford.
re-upped with
Trevor
right.
Harris is back with Saskatchewan. You missed out. If you really, really, really wanted a quarterback, Vernon Adams would have been the guy, but he's gone.
He's
Right. So to me, he Trey Ford was the best option. And frankly, you look at the quarterbacks in the West: Zach Collaros, Vernon Adams, Nathan Rourke, Trevor Harris, um,
And
and now
yeah,
Trey Ford.
right.
That is a tough division. They couldn't go with a maybe option. They had to go with a guy they believe can compete. Right now, it's up to them now to build around it. Right, and I think that's what this new regime is going to have to do, and they have to do it in a way that's going to help a team like that's doing a whole new slate, right? Clean slate. That
Absolutely.
takes time, but it's also how much time does this group have, right? How quick, how patient are they willing to be as well?
Absolutely. All right. So yeah, let's see what Edmonton does. Um Hervey has a lot of experience. He was in Edmonton before. He understands the fan base. He doesn't necessarily understand the management team because they've got a new ownership. So that's a little different, but they've decided to come back with him. Well, at least new leadership. So let's talk about Harris and him coming back with the Riders. There wasn't really I didn't hear, yeah, I'm coming back, everything, in the team saying, yeah, he's coming back. This really was um, this really was a signing not coming out of nowhere, but it wasn't coming out of predictability either. That fair?
Yeah, I would say in a way that's fair, right? It's like everything kind of was lining up. Like when I was looking at how free agency was looking, as soon as Calgary traded for Vernon Adams, and Montreal made the deal with Davis Alexander, to me it was like this is pretty much everything was lining up in a certain way, right? So like it was almost a guarantee that you were getting you were going to get Trey Ford going to stay with Edmonton because again, where else was he going to go? And maybe in a way that was Edmonton's leverage to get the 3-year deal and to get him at no maybe less money than maybe I don't know if he felt he I don't know, we don't know how much he was looking for, but you get 3 years over $1 million if everything all you hit all your incentives and stuff. It's kind of hard to pass up if you're a quarterback.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And from Harris's perspective, he's on a team that came very close to making it to the Grey Cup. I mean, the game that they lost to Winnipeg was terrible. It was a terrible loss, one that I don't think really exemplified the ability of the Riders. I think the Riders clearly underperformed in that game in the West Final. They underperformed in that game, and I believe the underperformance wasn't due to Trevor Harris, not really. So from Harris's perspective, I'd want to come back to Saskatchewan because if he is like many athletes who play sports wants a championship, um, you know, Winnipeg is not saying goodbye to Caleros, far as we know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if he wants to stay in the West, because in the East they're pretty set as well, like quarterback. That's that. With what happened in Montreal, that kind of solidified that. So yeah, Harris. This is a good opportunity for him in signing. Is it coincidental that Trey Ford and Harris are signed at the same time? Are they ducks in a row? Is one because the other one, and then there was nothing else? It was like a game of chicken. Those were the two teams that needed a quarterback, and now they both agreed at the same time who their guy is.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's also two teams in Edmonton and Montreal that are going younger. They're making a point to say we're trying some. I mean, Trey Ford's already been there, right? But in a way, it's almost like we went the route with the veteran guy. We're done with it. Now we're going with the younger option too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's good news for, Trevor Harris, and, it's good news for the Saskatchewan Roughriders as well. Uh, you know, Experienced quarterbacks who can really play well because he does play well. It's funny, a quarterback success, isn't sacks, and I don't mean the absence of them. I mean, a defender is interceptions, sacks. There's lots of ways that a player other than a quarterback can be defined as being successful. I don't think there's a position in the Canadian Football League more than the quarterback that says, if you don't win the Grey Cup, you're not successful. And this is what Harris is chasing, and then Fajardo last year discovered Arbuckle as well. You look at those two last quarterbacks that won Grey Cups, David, those guys didn't have the reputation of being great quarterbacks. Fajardo left the team because that team was frustrated that their team couldn't go anywhere with him at quarterback. Montreal took him in and went all the way. So, it's amazing. All I'm saying is it can flip on a dime. The definition of a successful quarterback relies so heavily on winning the championship.
It does. I mean, for a lot of players, winning a title means everything. They can have all the personal stats. I mean, they also looking to get a little money, right, to make sure that their families are taken care of. But in the end, they all want to win a title. They all want to win a Grey Cup. Unfortunately, there's only one Grey Cup,
To go
right,
around.
to go around. So it's tough. But and, and to me, like you look at Trevor Harris, that's the one thing he's missing. He's
Absolutely.
missing that Grey Cup. Um, Fajardo, yeah, he needed to prove I think a little more than Trevor Harris because Trevor Harris has been a number one for so long
Yeah.
and all those things. And I do think that when you look at how the landscape of like the CFL has been the last few years, right? You know, we had a Toronto team that won with a player that many thought could never win a title in the club, Ethel Thompson. He finally got over it, right? He finally climbed the mountain. You have then a Toronto team that figured people thought, they can't win it with Nick Arbuckle. They only win with the Nick Arbuckle. So you look at the quarterbacks that have won titles recently, and it's like even the top guys have had a hard time. Bo Levi Mitchell took him some time to get his first Grey Cup.
Mhm.
Well, he did get his first in 2014, technically, but to get that other one right after he was one of the better quarterbacks for so long. And then you look at, I mean, who else can we bring into the conversation here, right? When you look at,
You can talk about Kelly. I mean, he didn't.
I mean, Chad Kelly, he's eventually going to get there, right? He was paid like a quarterback that could go and win a Grey Cup. Now, with the way that team was playing, with the way things are going, probably was a good chance that they could have won with Chad Kelly at quarterback, right? But he has to be the one to do it. And I think that's going to be the big one for him, right? He's going to
Well,
want to
he
be the
won the
one.
one where he came in relief,
Yeah,
right?
I think like
Which
going start to finish.
yeah.
Probably.
What the thing about McLeod Bethel Thompson is he didn't finish, right? He didn't finish the game.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's that cloud of doubt or
Right.
lack of actually it's not the same as being on the sideline and the team winning a Grey Cup. It's nothing like that. He started the game, he put the game in a place where a guy could come in, make a couple of really good plays and win the game, so McLeod Bethel Thompson deserves all the credit in the world for putting, Kelly in a position where he could win a game, just being you know, and I said back then, and I'll say it uh, forever. The circumstances, isn't it funny, David? The last two Grey Cups the Argonauts won, right? The circumstances led to the victory.
Mm-hmm.
More than it wasn't just a simple they played better than the other team and won, right? I
Mhm.
mean, even though I think we all agree, and when we spoke to Smith that did the play by play, would the Argos have won, if Caleros didn't split his finger? I can say, and we heard Smith say they would have won anyway. But it's still only conjecture. It's not fact, right? So, and the first one they won, their young guy came in and I think befuddled the Winnipeg defense and won the game. In other words, what I'm saying is that Trevor Harris has every right to believe, given a little a little good luck, if you will, he could be hoisting the cup as well. There's no reason to believe that Harris can't do it, and I don't think there's any reason that to believe that the Riders can't do it.
Yeah, I mean they were so close, right? You look at this year, you know what? I'm sure they feel like when they watch what happened to Winnipeg in the Great Cup, they're almost like that could have been us, right? That could have been us, in that position to try and go head to head with Toronto. I mean, I can't see why they wouldn't feel that way. But I think again the gap. I know Winnipeg has gone there the last 5 years, but it hasn't been resounding. Like they did beat them resounding. I will say they did beat them resounding in the West Final, but like it was a grind for them. Winnipeg didn't get. There was an opportunity for a team to get there. Um, they it just it's one of those things where um again needing that full team effort. Quarterback's important. Quarterback's very important. But you look at Saskatchewan, there was more than just quarterback that was the problem in that game. And I think that's something that can't be overlooked.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about. So good luck to Harris. We should mention.
Maybe we got to get him on the show. Maybe we have to see
Yeah,
football on the
yeah.
show.
I guess we should. I guess we should. Um, let's talk about free agents,
Ooh.
and the Argos obviously and Carey have a really important one. We've talked about it already, but just a little summary. The running game and the ability of Carey to get first downs and get good yardage, helping to maintain drives, is the reason why they need him back, or someone similar.
Well, that's it, right? Do you feel you have anyone do you feel like you have anybody internal that can take his role? I personally don't think Kadeem Carey showed this year there's a lot more left in the tank than a lot of people are giving him credit for. But the other question you have to ask yourself is how much are you willing to pay when you consider everything else Toronto has to do,
And
right?
compete with the opposing teams that will come calling to Kadeem.
Well, exactly, right? Teams are gonna say, well, we also would like to have a starting running back like Kadeem Carey. So we're willing to pay for it. This is again what Toronto has had the issue with ever since they went 16 and 2 last year. All these other teams like, well, we want AJ Ouellette, so that's why Saskatchewan paid up big time for him. Oh, maybe now they're
It's
going
a
to see
two-edged
Kadeem Carey
sword.
the same way.
It's a two-edged sword, David. Like you sign a guy off a team for a lot more money than that team's willing to pay. You're taking on a bigger contract, and you don't have a lot of room for lot of bigger contracts on because of the cap. So it's a two-edged sword. And by two-edged as well, being in the Argo position or being in the team that has the player that everybody wants, they got to be careful they don't overpay the guy either. So you see, it's not about just keeping the guy; it's about keeping an eye on the cap.
Well, that's it, right? Like it's the cap, but it's also there's a lot of other things this team has to consider. You know, what can they get? Like the big one for me, can they get Win McManus to come back roughly around what he got this time around. Are they going to have to pay more for it?
Well, he's the highest paid defender, no?
One of, I don't know if he is the, if like he is for sure the highest paid.
He's very close.
Oh, there's no doubting he's close.
So the hope is that he fit into the budget last year. Can they throw some salt and pepper on his contract, make it a little more spicy? I guess is the question, right? And do they have the room in the cap to do it?
Yeah.
Or there's another side to this, and for me, David, he fits into this category almost perfectly. The last time the Argos won the Grey Cup, he was injured. He didn't get a chance to play in the big game, which made this year that much more important, I think, to him to win this game. And now then the question comes, how much does he want to be a part of bringing, the band back, keep the band together again for next year? That's really going to be the question. It's the question that the Argos in management has to ask themselves every time they think about signing somebody. How much of this team do you want to keep together, and what are we giving up if we try to keep them all together? Is it possible? And then, it's there are so many different positions, there are so many different roles in football that you could drop in one area but pick up in another area in a way that overcomes that drop. And those are the decisions that make the Argos, and teams like them that have annual success. That's what makes it work. It's not about keeping the guys together. It's knowing which guys, okay, he's going to go. They let go, and people they bring in. Well, Kadeem Carey is is one of the the great luck that they had last year, that he basically fell on their lap. Is there another opportunity with a replacement for Witten McManus to fall on their lap, David? I think it's a little harder with a defensive player because their play isn't as cut and dried as a running back. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can see a good running back a lot easier than you can. And I'm not just talking about the fans. I'm talking about the nuanced, you know, uh, defensive player and what he brings. He brings a lot to the team.
Well, I think like a player like Win, a good linebacker, one that it's not just what he does on the field. We have to remember there's a lot he does off the field that doesn't get recognized. I mean, that's why, you know, he is so coveted. And you notice the difference with him in the lineup versus him not in the lineup.
Yeah, you're spouting that thing that you and I both believe in. That is, he makes the other players on the team better.
He
That's
does.
quality. That's a quality that isn't just. It just doesn't just happen, right?
Well, don't forget they use the word culture a lot in Toronto.
Hmm.
He is the player that sets the culture,
By
especially on
definition,
defense.
he's the definition of the culture the Argos are trying to promote.
Exactly. Right. So that to me is the biggest part of this whole thing is that you've got a player who you know is valuable, but how valuable? I think they are going to make a good offer to him. I don't if he leaves, I personally don't think it's gonna be because the Toronto shortchanged them. Maybe they're gonna ask him to try to take a bit less, but I don't think they're gonna go, well, we think you need to take a pay cut to stay here.
Well,
I don't think
on the flip side, David, for him to leave Toronto, somebody's going to have to offer him. They're going to have to blow his socks off,
yeah.
right? That's what I think, because he really does like winning. He likes being a part of winning, and the culture that you're defining here with the Argos is about. It's a culture that tends to create a winning situation, and leaving a winning situation is something that's real hard. Let me ask you about a couple of free agents. Um, you know, the Argos traded Sean McEwen,
Yep.
and he was in Calgary. I don't think his stock fell. He's a great pass protector, and I really think that Calgary has to keep him now that they brought Adams in.
I think for sure. I think that Calgary always they're always like, proud of their offensive linemen. Sean McHugh, we know he went back not just because Calgary maybe made him a good offer, but because he went back home for family reasons, closer to home in Calgary, right? So that was another thing that, in my opinion, was I don't think I don't think it was. I think it's got a little overlooked. I remember when he left, and I spoke to Pinball about it, and I said, like, was there like, did your offer get beat? He's like, no, this was a case where he wanted to go back home. We made a what we thought was a pretty generous offer, but you can't you can't beat when an offer to go back home is on the table.
Absolutely.
So that's something I think that can't be discounted is when you got a chance to go back home, you're gonna take it.
The same could be the same could be said for Mathieu Betts in BC. That Montreal could. He's another key guy who didn't have that great a season this year in comparison to last year or the previous year anyway. So he's a guy that could end up in Montreal, and Montreal with they've already got a pretty good defense. I just can't imagine what Betts would do to make that team better. It almost seems he would be redundant going there. Would be the only reason why I'd say they don't bring him in.
I think for me, the only way he doesn't get there is if but the thing is, like, he decided I want to take one last crack at the NFL. Like that was a big part of his reasoning for leaving. It didn't work because he was trying to catch himself back up, get back up to speed while everyone's already at that speed. Never ever easy to do. And so I do wonder if BC decides, well, we can't afford you because we're paying Nathan Rourke a lot more money,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's something that can't be discontinued.
Yeah.
Nathan Rourke is making a lot more money. And so they're gonna have to get creative and looking to bring back guys that are now probably looking to make their own money somewhere else too.
Another guy, Jalen Philpott, whose brother has had a lot of success in Montreal. They're twins, but they haven't had twin careers thus far. Calgary's in a bit of a I don't know. Does Adams help keep him there, or is Jalen somebody who may turn up somewhere else and know that he can replicate for the most part the success his brother had? I don't think the difference between the two is that much. That those are two different career paths that they've been on. Does he go somewhere else? And he's you know, again, I'm talking Canadians here that could help
Yeah,
change fortunes of other teams.
he's one of those players for sure. Like, you're Calgary, you definitely want him back, but you're also having to, to balance the fact that it's not easy just to bring everyone back. And look, those players are very coveted. They're very coveted, so you got to think about that as part of your strategy and how much you want to pay for a Canadian, right? You pay like Curly Giddens Jr. was paid a lot, and then he didn't even last his contract in Toronto before they decided we needed to go in a different direction, right? So I mean, those are things that teams are gonna have to consider, right? If we give
Absolutely.
him the money, we believe he can be a game changer as a Canadian player.
And we I don't, but you might. The other thing is, it's about who's the player behind the player they're thinking about signing. There's that. So a lot of these great players, what we've learned in the Canadian Football League with Canadian players, the discussion I'm having with you right now is that there are great Canadian players who aren't on the starting roster who, given an opportunity, prove that they belong. And the hint of that, teams know, and there's a gamble that they make. For example, when Curly Gittins was sent, I mean, a lot of people knew, we knew that the Argos had the depth to do that. But did we know how much depth they had? Because this year they came back even stronger in Canadian receivers.
Well, again, it's
Every
the
team has
investment.
a situation.
Yeah, it's the investment you put in that position, right? You can't just you can't be a team that feels like you've brought in players. It's knowing you have the confidence in them to be that type of game changer. I think that's the important thing too when it comes to, like, yeah, Toronto drafted a bunch of Canadian receivers, right? Not just draft them, but draft them quite high,
Mhm.
right? Kevin Mittal, top 5 pick. Dejon Brissett, first first overall pick. I'm pretty sure he was first overall in 2020. Um, David Unger. They went and they signed, right. They they have really made it a point to say we need that good Canadian core. And that's been such a crucial part of what has made them successful.
And if you have a Canadian at one end of the lineup, it puts less pressure on the other end of the lineup. And that's why Canadians are so important. It's the counter it's the counterbalance that they create on a team to help create the balance, right? Two guys I'll put together, Adam Auclair and Royce Mechie, two guys in defenses that play key positions or play their positions in a key way. I know a defensive back doesn't have the same cachet as a linebacker like Adam Auclair, but this is what Canadian football players are doing. Auclair is a legitimate star linebacker, and again that balance of Canadian American or Canadian import comes into play here with that kind of guy if you can bring him in.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, it's one of those things where you, teams teams have been better at valuing Canadian talent more so than past years. But at times, I feel like it's still an under. It's an area that gets overlooked in a lot of ways, right? I look back. Winnipeg was the team that was big on it, right? And look what happened right now. Now teams have started to copy it, not even copy it, but have understood the desire to be better in that area. And look at what Hamilton's done. They went and they took one of their guys from that front office to say, okay, that's an area, like if I'm Hamilton, we've struggled drafting impactful players in the draft, right? Maybe this is an area we need to focus on. So what are we going to do? We're going to go and bring in a guy that worked in Winnipeg that can help us in that area. And I think that when you look at what Hamilton's been going through this offseason, that's the part that can't be overlooked. Right? You go and you get a new GM, you lose a GM like at Herbie. So what do? You go and you poach a team that has dominated the CFL since 2019.
Yep. And then you have the players that teammates want to have back. There are not many players that can make that kind of demand other than a quarterback. And in Hamilton, David Beard is free to sign with anyone. And Bo Levi Mitchell, I'm sure, is talking to management going, no, I want this guy back because I had a real great offensive season and he's part of the reason why it was so good. Don't let him go. I want to keep him. And
Mm-hmm.
this is one of those guys that offensive lineman where we talk all year about teams whose offensive line has not been so successful and creates a situation where offense isn't as effective because of their inability to get a good offensive line. This guy's an anchor in an offensive line. He's going to be. There are a lot of teams that are going to want him, and there are a lot of quarterbacks out there that wouldn't mind a guy like him in front of them.
That's a position that always gets like Saskatchewan has been big the last few years in trying to upgrade their offensive line. BC has done the same, right? Toronto's done it a lot. It's yeah. I mean, you talk about a quarterback wanting to bring his own guy back. It was asked during the end of the East semifinal press conference to Drew Brown, will you go to management and be a bit more hands on in how the team is built? And he kind of he kind of shied away from that. And to me, that was an opportunity for him to say, yeah, I would like to be more involved in that process because there are players I want back and there might be players I want to have. Right. And so, yeah, I think if you're Hamilton, if you're committing to Bo Levi Mitchell, what appears they are, you need to have an offensive line that's going to help him keep him upright. Because again, he had a rough season, but he was picking it up at the right time and showing the team that maybe there is something there, but you got to be able to build around him. They haven't been good enough at building around Bo Levi Mitchell.
And they're going to have to spend a little more money on the other side of the ball as well, David. You know, the temptation to spend more money on the other side of the ball because they've had problems at, you know, their defense is the main reason why the team wasn't as successful because the offense was hitting on all cylinders there most of the season. Another guy I'd like to talk about is a Ford. Now, because Trey Ford has been signed,
You just
basically he was the guy to be signed, and he was. Then there's Terrell Ford in Winnipeg, who we've seen this year help. He was a big part of getting Winnipeg to the Grey Cup. Big play defensive back. He's gonna
you
he's gonna get a lot of attention.
I was literally about to go there. I was about to say that if you are Hamilton, if there's a player you should go and target, it is Terrell Ford. Two reasons. One, a prominent Canadian player at an important position, defensive back. He is also a local product. Niagara Falls. You don't
Not
think he would maybe enjoy the
far.
ability to go home? Yes, for sure. He's had a lot of success in Winnipeg this year. It was a slow start. Eventually got his footing there. Went all the way to the Grey Cup. But I think if you're Hamilton, they always like to go and poach other teams' Canadian players or even defensive
Yeah,
players.
but they're gonna have
Now,
to do it with a little more, success. They've signed a lot of contracts, but this has got to be the year where stuff starts to gel for Hamilton
yeah.
because that's been their biggest problem. It isn't the talent they brought in; it's how it's gelled that's been the problem.
Mhm. Well, I think that's it. You have to find that right chemistry. You have to have the coaching that's going to get them to there as well. Is that possible now in Hamilton? We'll see, right? But the reason why I also bring up Terrell Ford, we just talked about Hamilton. Where was Hamilton's general manager just working? Oh, sorry. Did he just work
Yeah,
for
he was just
Winnipeg?
at Winnipeg, Ted Govia. What a great pickup for I have to say for Hamilton, this is a great pickup.
Yep.
It's such a good pickup. You could hear the you could hear the nervous pants in Winnipeg in replacing him. Doesn't get enough of the credit for what went on there. The same thing that actually it's funny, it's ironic really that they brought Govia in and they lost Burke, who basically I think they're interchangeable when they were in the positions of assistant general manager. They're two guys that have outgrown the position, and he's ready to be a GM. And without the bad luck that Sean Burke had in his first couple of years in Ottawa, he made a lot of great moves, but they all got well, they got piled on by injuries. But we'll see what Gavia can do in Hamilton, and he's a GM, and he has a relationship with players, and maybe Ty Ford is one of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's where I think if you're Winnipeg, you're like, oh, we might lose some guys because Ted, you know, Hamilton might have a budget for it, right?
Mhm.
We'll see. You talk about. I think Hamilton's going to be a team to watch because they've been close, but they haven't gotten there just yet, right? In terms of finding those, getting the right mix. And you talk about getting the right mix, and I think Ted's going to really help Hamilton have a proper vision and what they want all three phases to look like. It's more than just defense too. I also think the special teams is another issue where they have to look at improving that as well.
David, I'll say another thing. As a person who's watched Hamilton closely, because I go to a few of their games, even when the Argos aren't playing. And I have to say, the biggest challenge for Hamilton this year with the signing of Govia as their GM, they are the definition of too many cooks spoil the broth. They have so many people involved in that team from a management perspective, including their president, who came from coaching, and general manager. There's going to have to be, I think, for Ted Govia to have success, he's going to have to be given the power to show that he can deliver that success. One of the biggest Hamilton problems, in my opinion, is they've always had a lot of really smart people, a lot of smart people in the organization around the players and their development, their being brought in, and all that stuff. I think it's time for them, for those tall foreheads they have in Hamilton, to take a back seat and let a guy have one thought and pursue that plan, his single plan, and not have to make it fit into somebody else's plan. That's, to me, from the outside, that's what I'll say about Hamilton, is they need a streamlined management situation that affords a good, solid plan that someone can attack without worrying about satisfying other plans that also feel they need to be heard. I really think that's, if they give Govia the full control of that team, it may not be this year, but I believe that he's as good as Burke was when he went to Ottawa. With a little bit of luck, Govia will have a little more success than Burke had in Ottawa. But to me, they're similar. They're very similar.
Yeah, they are very similar, and I just think it's where the league is going, right? Having guys who truly understand the Canadian landscape. Hopefully, Hamilton's got it right this time because they thought with the vision that they had with Orlando Steinauer was the right way, and it hasn't proven to be working in the way that I think they expected. So
That's
I'm
true.
curious to see if I it might be one of those things where if if they don't get it going soon, I really chew wonder where it goes now.
Well, the fan base deserves better. The owner has done everything he can, even brought in partners in ownership to help make sure that Hamilton has the ability to put together the best management team that they can. Hamilton has not, again, this is on the other side of the coin of what I said. It's not like they haven't brought enough people in that know the game of football that can help. That isn't the problem. It's not the problem they've had over the years. And I gotta say, if Hamilton straightens their act out, and it's defense, and with Govia coming from Winnipeg, I think he's seen what winning looks like for a little while. He might have an understanding of the way it should look. And I think that's an important factor in putting together a team. You have to know what it looks like. You have to know what winning looks like. Just like players, when you're playing on a team and you make it to the Grey Cup, you got a front seat to what it takes. And I think that's important. I think it's important that Grey Cup victories and Grey Cup experience will help get you there again or for the first time.
Yeah, no, I mean it's having the culture, setting the culture right. I think that's the other thing that needs to be that can't be overlooked, right? In a lot of ways, is they go. Toronto did it when they went after Calgary. They're all the guys in Calgary. Now I think you're going to start seeing it in Winnipeg. A lot of players and things coming out of Winnipeg because you know what? Some players might just be like, yeah, we made it 5 straight times, but I've also lost it the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And it might just be one of those, okay, we got to go in a different direction now.
I agree with you. And what else? I'll throw a qualifier in there, a little devil's advocacy. It could end up being like what happened with Mace. A lot of people thought, oh boy, half the Argo defense is going to Saskatchewan. Well, it never happened. It didn't happen. So there's that too, right? Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. It's just there's an opportunity there where you have a GM who knows that team so well and knows what winning looks like and how they can be a big part of winning. So yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun being in Hamilton for Hamilton fans because if and when this team turns things around, David, the Eastern Division of the Canadian Football League, if you don't have a ticket to an Eastern Division game this year, you're going to be missing some pretty exciting football. I really believe this is. I keep saying, and I have to say, recently it's come true. I've said that this is the best East Division we've had in a while, and I can say it again, and I can say it even, having said it after two different teams in the East won consecutive Grey Cups. If that doesn't say the East has improved, what else does?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And they're doing it with good records in the regular season. They're not doing it with sub 500 records too.
And it's a great situation to be in, to win against good teams, win against great teams, win against teams you're not supposed to beat. So that's the opportunity for Hamilton. And this is the time of year where everybody has a shot and we can dissect every move that happens. So in Edmonton, to review, they have themselves a starting quarterback, one that they've committed to in a way that they never have. We also know that every team now has a list of free agents that are Canadian to go after to see what they can do. Any other, if you were to review what we talked about today and how to look forward with that information that we've learned today.
Yeah, it's been a fun off season so far, and I'm curious to see if we get any surprises. That let's just say.
Yeah, and there's always room for them. But the neat thing about the Canadian Football League and the talent that plays in the Canadian Football League, it's amazing how surprised you are when they bring a guy in and he does stuff that you didn't think he could do. Like, not that Kadeem Carey wasn't a great running back, and not that. And I'm sorry we keep talking about the Argos, but that's who I know the best. In all honesty, they have a kick returner they had fall in their lap, and now it's how the Canadian Football League works. There's so much talent out there. Given an opportunity, a lot of players that don't get the opportunity can get a chance to shine, and that's the fun part, as far as I'm concerned, in following the Canadian Football League.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Well, I guess we can call this one a wrap. Eduardo, Get ready to pull the plug. Thanks to David Morassutti for joining us here on the show and an integral part. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing live Mondays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World, watch it here, read it, download it, live it. Thanks for watching, everybody.